Lori Bitter joined us for an interview recently and opened our eyes to the unique phases of the 50 to 65 plus market. It may not be what you think. She brings a researcher's instincts to understanding our unpredictable generation. Through her firm, The Business of Aging, she provides strategic consulting, research, and development for companies seeking to engage with mature consumers. She serves as publisher of Grand, the digital magazine for grandparents. Her book, The Grandparent Economy, is now available. She was president of J. Walter Thompson's Boomer division, JWT BOOM, the nation's leading mature market advertising and marketing company. Prior to that, she led client service for AgeWave Impact. She is the contributor to 5 books on aging consumers and is a leader in research on topics relevant to the senior and boomer population. In this second part of our interview, Lori discusses intergenerational mentoring, the aftershocks of the Great Recession, living solely on Social Security, and what marketers can learn about speaking to this demographic.
I'm really involved with an organization called Bridges Together, and they write programming for intergenerational experiences. One of the things that I've learned from looking at all of their materials and understanding what they do is the power of having an experience with an older adult and how that changes your perception, how that can change ageist perceptions. So one of the exercises they did was have young children draw pictures of what old looks like. And they drew wheelchairs and people with canes and hunched over. And they took that classroom and created kind of an intergenerational program for these kids so that they were spending time with older adult mentors. And the pictures they drew after were vibrant and happy, and they didn't reflect disability. And, it was a very different, just a very sort of different aura around aging that these kids had experienced. And so if we take that and apply it to, 30-year-olds or 18-year-olds or even 40-year-olds and older adults in the workplace, I mean, why are we always keying in on, oh, well, they're not good with technology and they're slower? It's like that, that can be true of a younger worker, just like it can be true of an older worker. And so I think when we create a positive sort of intergenerational mentoring experience, whether it's a reverse mentor to an older adult or a mentor to a younger person, we're going to change those perceptions. I mean, that helps get all of that garbage out of the way and really lets people see a person on the other side of the table, as opposed to, isms, and disability and what's wrong. It helps them focus on what's right.
How about your book, The Grandparent Economy?
I wrote this book a couple of years ago, and we had just done some research on grandparents. As I think I told you, I had bought a small interest in Grand magazine, and I wanted to know what was going on with baby boomer grandparents and how they were different from previous generations of grandparents. And my hypothesis was that, we were the ultimate helicopter parents. So were we going to helicopter over our grandbabies just like we did our children when they were in school? And what was the grandparenting outlook going to look like? And it was, I did it right before the recession hit. I did the original research right before the recession hit. And then the recession hit. And so we went back and we did another piece of research to see what else, if anything, had changed. And particularly, we wanted to know if boomers were stepping up to fill in the gaps that were left when their adult children became unemployed, when their adult children lost their homes, there was just a lot of really tragic stuff that went on very quickly when the recession hit. I mean, people, there was that first round of people finding out how bad their financial situation was, and then there were the home losses, and then there were job losses again, and it kind of came in these big waves, and I wanted to sort of sort all that out and look at it. And what we found out was that the majority of baby boomers who were grandparents at the time stepped up in really unprecedented ways to help their adult children. And it didn't matter what the socioeconomic status was of the grandparent. We talked to some very affluent grandparents who stepped in and were paying private school tuition. They were taking over car insurance. They were, making sure college was going to be taken care of. They were doing all sorts of things that they had never really thought about doing. One of the most interesting things that happened during this time were the family cell phone plans. And we saw adult children getting on their parents' cell phone plans and then putting their children on those cell phone plans. And when we went back and asked people, 6-7 years later, are you still paying for those plans? And they're like, oh, well, it's a much better financial deal for all of us if we just all stay on the plan. So there are a lot of adult children who are getting their cell phones paid for still.
Right. But does the fact that they had to step up in all of these ways, what did you understand or find out what that did to their retirement plans then, or their savings?
So this was the downside of all of that is they took over payment on student loan debt. I mean, like millions of dollars boomers took over in student loan debt to the detriment of their own retirement. They quit saving for their own retirement to take over those. We saw many, many middle class older adults say, look, I had to change my healthcare benefits and my own healthcare plan so I could help my kids pay for their benefits and replace benefits that they lost. So there were kids who were going into COBRA who couldn't make their monthly healthcare payments, and instead of them doing without healthcare, the parents were stepping up and making the COBRA payments, but to their own health detriment. We saw in really financially strapped homes, grandparents who were not filling their prescriptions so that their grandchildren could have after school activities, pay for the lunch program, and get to participate in things like cheerleading and baseball and softball, and so it didn't matter what the economic status was. It was hurting grandparents at every economic level. And we also saw a huge number of young adults and their children moving back in with parents, and parents moving in with their young adult families to try to, everybody was trying to figure out where to live, how to live, and how to negotiate this time period. And so it created a lot of intergenerational households. Some of those remain intact. I mean, intergenerational living is at a 40-year high right now. So, it had kind of...
And here we are 10 years later after the recession.
Yep.
And a lot of people had to alter their financial planning. Mm-hmm. And so this is a very large number of people that are going into this next phase without being financially prepared. And that's what you talk about, that many are not necessarily looking at it, but they're going to be confronted with this reality.
Right.
Interesting.
I mean, it's depending on which survey or which study or which article you read, a vast number of people are going to live on Social Security alone. I mean, that's pretty scary.
Yeah.
I mean, they've saved less than $10,000.
Right. I've heard of this number too, or some at 400, and a lot of, I've heard numbers like over 40% are insecure about, about what retirement is going to be.
Well, and we have for the first time in sort of the retirement history of our country, we have a lot of singles retiring.
Uh-huh.
Whether by divorce or whether they remained single by choice. And a lot of those are women. And, we know women don't traditionally haven't earned at the same levels.
Mm-hmm.
And so, they haven't been able to save at the same levels. And so we could sort of have an epidemic of older retired women who are at risk.
No plans from the federal government or anywhere to really address that is what I'm hearing.
No, and it's we don't have a comprehensive, we don't have a czar for aging and retirement in our government. And you could argue whether we need more government in this process, I guess, but it certainly seems like someone should be on top, somewhere with all the data that we have, someone should be on top of the issue and should be at least pointing out where the tsunamis are about to hit the shores, right?
Right.
Because I think we are in for some really tough times. But it's also, it's places like nonprofits and foundations, foundation money and grant money. Increasingly, years ago, you used to be able to organizations could get grants for looking at aging issues and focused on aging. And now increasingly, everything's focused on children. And, and it's
because the struggle is so widespread, right?
The need across the board is so great.
Yeah.
There are still some foundations that focus only on intergenerational activity, or that's where the intergenerational piece is where you see the older adult come in. But it's just getting harder and harder to find research dollars, to find, organizations who are solely focused on, what's going on with the older adult and where those needs are going to be. And when it struck me as so bizarre when, the Trump administration was talking about ending Meals on Wheels, which is a rounding error in the federal budget.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it is so meaningful in the lives of so many older adults, not just from a nourishment perspective, not just from the food perspective, but there are a number of pilot programs going on to have Meals on Wheels people trained to help end social isolation, to be that check-in person with the older adult who may be isolated from their community. And so programs like that have the ability to solve a number of issues of aging, not just the food and nutrition issues. And yet we're looking at cutting those out,
How are your clients addressing this information that you found?
Yeah. So my clients, are sort of come from all over the aging space. One of my favorite clients to talk about is a client who matches roommates for older adults and is part of the co-housing movement. And so, Silvernest looks at older adults who decided to age in place and stay in their own home, but they have rooms in their home. And they'd like to have somebody there, but they want to make sure it's somebody who's like them or of their own age. And so here's a secure environment where they can meet people in their community who are the same age, who have the same interests, and, be matched. They've got things in place like background checks and lease documents that have been approved for that state, and So it's not just the roommate matching, it's all the other services that go along with, renting
And
to someone.
In cases, everybody is better off financially.
Yeah. And it helps everyone financially, especially in urban areas where rent has become, urban areas are great for older adults because they have the ability, they have public transportation, they can get to the services they need more easily than in rural communities often, but they get priced out of the housing market. So it can be a real lifesaver. So, they're really a very smart organization and very, I think, focused. It's very common to find startups in particular who are focused on boomers who are more affluent or can spend money on services outside of the insurance model, right? But it's not often that you see startups that are focused on the middle income or lower middle income boomer. And so I think, Silvernest is really addressing a huge issue. I mean, housing is a huge problem. We have clients who are working on mobility, which, as we live longer and longer, joints wear out, our body parts give in. So I think, helping find new ways to address mobility issues, I think that's a big one. I have a client that I think is so smart. They're addressing financial planning, and they've started with the sort of the Gen X generation and encouraging them to get into conversations with their parents about their finances early. And so encouraging them to, create sort of, remember all the health vaults that came along where we were going to, secure our healthcare information. Well, this is sort of the idea of securing like your financial information in a vault so that when your adult child needs it, they know who your lawyer is and who your financial planner is and where your banking information is and all of that. So it's a collaboration between the adult child and their parent who knows they're going to need their adult child to step in at some point, but it's getting all that stuff organized together so that you all know where it is and you're all having really productive conversations about how you want things to be as you age. Which for some reason, between the World War II generation and the baby boomers, nobody wanted to talk about any of that stuff. It was like, it's like we were sort of afraid to have end of life conversations and talk about wills and power of attorney and all of those things. And when I mentioned earlier that this generation of caregivers is a lot more pragmatic, while they aren't emotionless, I mean, they love their parents, but they have a much more pragmatic approach about having those kind of conversations,
right?
And opening those conversations early. And I think that's going to be a really good thing as we age, to have that sort of very practical eye on the caregiving experience. So,
do you have an example of the worst approach to marketing to boomers that you've seen? I bet you've seen so much of this.
Oh my God. I hate to harken back to an old one, but the I've fallen and I can't get up approach, which to me is that anytime you use fear, it's demotivating. It's not just bad. It's really demotivating. I mean, it paralyzes people. Fear is not a good emotion for the the first 5% who go, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, and press purchase, maybe. But for the rest of people, they're all standing back going, well, one, I didn't even know that was a problem, and and two, I think some of the some of the stuff around adult diapers and incontinence and where they've taken all of this now, where they're trying to make it hip and younger, and they've got Lisa Rinna doing the ads, and it's like, okay, there's a fine line between making it okay and making it weird.
Right. That's a great way of putting it.
Lisa Rinna in the clingy cocktail dress wearing Depends, to me, is just weird.
Yes, agreed. Wow. I haven't seen that.
So, the focus is on the dissonances for baby boomers is like, I think as a generation, we're acutely aware that stuff's starting to fall apart. and we're pretty savvy about our ability to solve problems and find solutions to it. And I just think that some of that money is really poorly spent by companies. I mean, it's like, really, you think we don't know that we have these issues. I mean,
right.
Some of the pharmaceutical stuff I think is really ridiculous. There's some really good stuff going on right now, better pharmaceutical ads, but like when all the Cialis and all of those ads came out, it was sort of like, we went from the ridiculous to the sublime. I mean, it was just a lot of bad messaging, a lot of not really understanding.
Yeah. Let's squeeze in a little bit about this upcoming Boomer Business Summit. Is that correct? What's it called?
The long name is the Silicon Valley Boomer Venture Summit.
You're involved in that as one of the planners. Is that correct?
Yes. Mary Furlong has had these 2 events every year for the last 15 years. And for about the last 9 or 10, I've been helping. In the last 2 or 3, I've been co-producing with her.
Tell us a little bit about the summit then.
So this particular summit is focused on investment in the longevity economy. So, all those dissonances of aging, as Mary says, create market opportunities. So we see a lot of startup companies and biotech, in education, focused on the dissonances of aging, whether it's mobility, whether it's medical devices, whether it's new online platforms, whatever that is. We are looking for companies who are in that space, and then on the other side, we are looking for investors, whether they're angel investors, whether they're venture capitalists, whether they're growth stage investors, or organizations that invest in small companies or acquire small companies. So we try to bring together the companies who are looking for money and the money at this conference, and to get them to understand more in depth who this consumer is and why this consumer is important, but also to get them talking to each other. It's a huge networking opportunity. It's an incredible opportunity for small and startup organizations to learn go-to-market strategies from companies who've been there. So in the past couple of years, we've had some pretty amazing exits from startups like Great Call and CareLinks and Caring.com. And so it's a chance to learn from those CEOs and their teams, how to build a company, how to put your team together, how to go to market, and kind of what the hottest marketing strategies are today for companies in this space. So it's learning, it's networking, and it's bringing the money together with the people who, either need partners or more financing or a distribution channel.
Yeah. Well, good. And that's happening when and where?
It's happening June 20th and 21st. It's a 2-day event this year, and it's at the Claremont in Berkeley.
Folks can find you and your consulting practice at thebusinessofaging.com.
Yes, and they can reach out to me via email at lori@thebusinessofaging.com.
That's great. Well, I really appreciate your time. We've been dying to talk to you, and we finally made it happen. And we'll see if we can make it up to your event. And I hope you'll sign up for our newsletter and give us guidance along the way. We're finding our way here.
Definitely, I'd love to have another conversation with you, and I hope you do make it up in June. I would love to meet you.
Very nice. Okay. Thank you again, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks, Jeff.
Okay. Bye now.
Thank you for joining us on Next For Me Interviews. Find out more and subscribe to our free weekly newsletter at nextforme.com.